Hi, it's Odeean here. Today I've got a review of MakeToys Pandinus, which is MakeToys' somewhat stylized version of Scorponok. This is the second in the series of CityBots by MakeToys. I didn't buy Utopia, and that just came down to some choices. I really liked the way Utopia looked, but money constraints combined with the fact that we got Generations Metroplex, which I have a few of, just meant that I gave that a skip. Still might pick it up sometime. This guy seemed pretty unique looking, and I didn't want to miss the chance at getting such a monstrosity, so I did spend quite a chunk of cash to pick this up. The Australian exchange rate at the time was pretty bad, so I think by the time I got this in hand, it cost me about 650 local dollars, which is pretty expensive. I'm not quite sure exactly how I feel the value turned out, but it is a pretty cool toy if you can disregard that price. This guy is actually so big that to review it, I've gone out of my room and come down here. Forgive the chunks of wood in the background, but it is huge. It's bigger than I thought it would be, and I knew it wasn't so tall, but just let me pan up a little bit. The bulk, like it's almost as wide as it is tall, and it's quite heavy. So I've pulled right back here. Thank goodness in this space I have room to move back. Now I can't do the whole review at this length because my arm just doesn't even touch it. So you can see how far I have to go back just to fit the whole thing in. While he's in robot mode, before I do anything else, I think I'll show some comparisons. Now I do love my exclusive version of Metroplex with that chrome, and you can see that Metroplex is way higher than him. So if you're thinking that Pandinus is going to fit in with this Generations Titan, I really don't think so. It's very inadequate height-wise. That's not really a problem if you've got Utopia, but as I said, I don't have Utopia, so I feel like he's a bit of a mismatch. Not much difference if you've got Fortress Maximus, because he's basically the same toy, just with different bits added onto him. So again, Pandinus isn't fitting in very well with Fortress Maximus. And now for the comparison that really matters the most to me. Over here I've got Sentinel's Gigantic Action Scorponok, which I've got to say I really like quite a bit. I like it a lot, to be honest, and he's in really good scale, and you know I love G1 looking stuff. He looks really G1. He is a vinyl, like it feels like a vinyl. He's not a transformer. He can't transform into anything. Pandinus here definitely transforms, but I feel more like Pandinus is his own thing, just masquerading as Scorponok so that they can sell him as a transformer. But you know, he doesn't really look that much like Scorponok to me. He is cool. Down here next to Pandinus's gigantic horned foot, I've got this tiny little shockwave. I don't know what they call these. Is this Legends? I don't know. This is the size they used to be, at least. I just picked this shockwave up today. I thought he was fantastic. I hardly buy any official Transformers in my area because most of them just look like not so good. But this shockwave, I thought it was excellent. I know it's not a review of him, but check that out. Pretty cool. Anyway, he only comes up to around about the top of the foot of Pandinus. So Pandinus has a very big foot. If I put him up here, closer to the head, you can get some idea about the relative sizes of the heads. Remembering that this is a headmaster. We've got a headmaster inside this helmet unit here. But I would say that the headmaster robot is probably about, 5 or 6 times bigger than the head of this shockwave here. So you can get some idea about that. Down on the ground here, Pandinus has this little flap which is meant to open. Now, obviously it's meant to fit his own headmaster in it. I'm thinking that will fit in there. You could fit easily any one of Hasbro's headmasters off the current generation of toys in there. But if you like minicons, so this is I don't know where this comes from, look like a Armada minicon. If you stick this minicon in here, it is not really going to fit. So it's not a minicon sized storage bay, just for basically current headmasters. While I'm showing the foot, I'm just going to note that these panels, the orange see-through panels, also pop open. So pop that shut. It's actually a little bit hard. I'm not going to do that. My fingernails hurt. But that's a cool feature. I don't know what you could store in there, but I guess if you were if you're a kid playing with this, I'm sure you could find something to put in there. Just as an adult collector, I kind of appreciate it. I think that it's more of a design feature, how they could get that plastic to stay there, than a play feature, but it does have dual purpose. I really love these horns. They look so nice, and I like the way that there's molded detail inside the horn. I think that is one of my favorite parts of the whole toy, the way these just spike out like that. Really cool. Looking at the stability of the figure as a whole, the big feet definitely help. Now when you get it out of the box first, you're tempted to think it doesn't sit flat in the ground because the feet just don't match. But that's until you realize that these incredibly powerful ankle ratchets can actually move to level it off. So I didn't notice that at first because I just thought it wasn't going to move. But listen to this. Hang on. Do it. Hear that ratchet? So tight. It can really take the weight. Now I'm not sure how well that's going to survive. It has that feel like it could do with some lubrication. It doesn't. It feels very dry and it makes a squeaky noise as I do it. So I don't think there is any lubrication in there. But out of the box, it's definitely strong enough. Although in the long run, maybe you could add some graphite-based lubrication yourself, and it would probably be a little bit better off. Now, apart from that ratchet, it does have these huge pistons, and they are actually really functional. As you move it, like I'm going to try to do it again, which is hard to do. You can see as I ratchet that up, the piston actually closes in. So it's for real, actually functioning cylinders at the back there. Now, for transformation, they will detach. So you can see if I just pop that off, it's on a ball down the bottom. So it's pretty stiff, like it can hold its own position, and it has the ability to go up and down like that. Now, it doesn't come the whole way off, so you're not really in any danger of popping it loose, but it's very cool. One of the kind of signature features of this toy, I think. It really shows up good in pictures and makes it a lot more fun to play with. Another awesome thing which is down here at the back of the leg, and at first when I saw it I thought, is this another little cavity to put a Minicon or Headmaster in? So when you pop this open, you think, oh no, what's in there? It looks like some kind of handle, and it is. What is this? It's a magazine of ammunition for his gun. Oh, freaking awesome. And there's another one over on the other side. So he's got 2 spare magazines. Now, one of them just popped off. It actually comes with this gun, which I've just popped it out there. And you can see now, I don't think this gun looks particularly good. It's a little bit, I don't know. It's more toy looking than the rest of the figure. But the fact that that pops off is awesome. Like, check this out. How do I do this? I don't want that. I want the whole thing out. There we go. So there's the magazine that was already in there. And once you've done that, you can either snap one of these spares back in, or if you don't like it there at all, you can just collapse it right in and make a pistol instead of whatever that used to be. Now, I like the front of it. These spikes, the way they stick up like that, it has the same visual cues as the foot, so it definitely fits in. I just feel like this back section is a little bit bland. Maybe some paint would have made it pop out just a little bit better. His right hand has a custom little piece of plastic here, which is supposed to snap onto the gun. So it's the other hand doesn't have it, just this one. So if you want to hold the gun in this hand, you've got to put it against that and then just snap it in. And it does hold. Now I've lost his ammunition here, which is just flown off. Let's pop that back in. And I find it to not really snap on that well. So look, let's try to get a better connection. Like, it's a bit questionable, to be honest. And even if you get it on well, when you play with it, it's going to knock itself off. You know, it's pretty cool. I don't think it matters that much, but I just can't understand why these companies, why can't they just put a peg that pegs in? Why go with all this fancy bullshit when a peg works perfectly well? I'm not sure. I think these days everyone wants to get a little bit of that masterpiece feeling happening where things don't look so much like toys. but a peg is really useful, and I think it would have been better in this situation. You do also have the option of pegging that gun up in under this Decepticon emblem, zapper, laser, I don't know what this is. Now, I'm going to snap this up. Listen to those ratchets, very awesome. It's handheld camera here because it's a bit tall. You're going to see it's got its own weapon, like blaster, under there, but just behind that there's a peg hole. So the handle of the gun, very conveniently, just shoves straight up into that peg hole, and there you go. You've got an added weapon on the end of that Scorpion stinger. Now, since the beginning of the review, you'll see I've had these shields pegged onto the back of the forearms, and flipping it around you can see the other one. And if you want, you can join them both onto one arm. It does stick backwards a little bit, but it's definitely doable if you prefer the shield on one side. They're very easy to get off. If you look in here, just focus for a sec, there's a little slot, and it just slots right off like that. So that's that one. Let's slot the other one off. So if you prefer it to look without those shields, definitely very easy to do. Listen to this. That's some hardcore ratcheting right there. Now, once you've taken the shields off, if you don't like these missile things up here, you can slot those right off. And they have some fabulous paintwork on that those 4 little torpedoes or missile spam, whatever you want to call it. You can choose to slot these into that position, up or down, whichever direction you like. So if you like those to be on the forearms, you do have that option. Look at his head there, it's gone a bit wrong. These things here, it's a real pity that the missile spam on these knees hasn't been picked out with red. If these little missiles were painted the same as these, it would have been a lot better, because this is a fantastic detail in here. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 on each side, little missile caps, which is pretty cool. These things actually can pop off if you're not careful with them. I'm not going to do it now because it's annoying to put back on, but if you're rough during the transformation, this whole unit can just pop off. Now, it's held together only with a thin piece of plastic, so if you're too rough while you're doing that, there's the possibility of snapping it, but just with a little bit of care, I don't think it's too much of a problem. Once you've pulled off the 2 sections of shield, they can both just slot together like that. Now this is useful later in the transformation, but it can be, again, a big shield unit, which looks pretty cool. And if you want it even longer, can extend all the way out like that. Now, it would have been good if there was a peg hole in it here for the weapon. Just thinking, maybe no, it won't fit in there. So not really anywhere to connect the gun to the shield, which is a missed opportunity, because to put a hole there would have been so easy. One last view before I get him transformed is from the back. So with the best figures, you can get a good view from every direction, and this is one of those figures that has a really attractive looking back. Funnily enough, a toy like different Voltron toys that I've had have quite often looked really good from the back. Voltron is a good back looking figure, and not a lot of Transformers can say that these days, but this guy, he looks fabulous from the back. I've chosen to have these legs out like that, but you could tuck them away in different poses if you don't like to see the Scorpion legs out. And even though it's only got one fixing point, this Scorpion tail at the back is pretty damn solid. So I'm not going to show this transformation now, how it actually happens, because the figure is heavy, and to get it on camera is longer than my arm, and just for practical reasons I think I'm going to give that a skip. So let's skip to Scorpion mode. Scorpion mode. It can be a bit fiddly to get it into Scorpion mode. The transformation isn't really that hard. It's just you've got to get the clicks, the right number of clicks, otherwise tabs don't line up. It is very big, very heavy. Now it does have a wheelbase. That shield, if you can see down there with little rollers on it, does go underneath. It pegs in underneath. And on this hard surface it doesn't roll, it just slides along because the wheels are just hard plastic. I doubt that it's ever really going to roll, but it just gives it some kind of base to sit on as it moves so that these legs don't scrape along the ground. Now the Scorpion legs are individually ball jointed just at the one joint. Other than that, they're a solid sculpt, and you hardly use them, so it doesn't really matter. You wouldn't want them too articulated or they'd be flopping all over the place. Now it does have the essential Scorponok features. It's got the big claws, and they are articulated still because they're just his arm joints from robot mode. It's a bit hard to show it all here actually. Let's push it back just a little bit further. So you can see the tail up here. You still got some movability, and you can still put the gun in there, so it's got a weapon up there. All these missile spam pods are pointing forward now, and the pistons that were his hydraulics on the back of the ankles have moved to a different spot, so you could say that they're some kind of cannon or rocket launcher. These flaps that I showed before to fit something in now can open, and you could put a few other robots in here to join him in the fight. The gun pods here rotate around so that you've got these two guns at the top and two at the bottom on both sides pointing forward for action. You can flip up these little panels as a kind of display, if you can imagine someone sitting in here. Now, some of the smaller headmasters from the current Transformers, like official Transformers lineup, may actually even be able to stand in that spot, so that's pretty cool. The head robot, who I'm guessing is still Zarak, is sitting behind this little scope region. I like the way this slides up. It's just like... Now, there he is sitting in there. There's actually a peg in his bum, so you can just... or a tab rather, so you can just tab him in and he won't fall out and go loose in there. But because you've got to push it in to tab it, it can actually pop the whole module off that he's sitting in, like the chair module, in which case you'll have to raise this up and tab it back on from underneath. Now, you can see that that moves around a bit, so I guess some play value is to be had in that. If he wanted to load up some cargo or weapons inside, his chair could kind of raise off the ground and he would rotate, and then underneath you could load it up and then close it back down. That's pretty cool. I don't know if that's an intentional feature, but he does have capacity to store something in there, which, I mean, I'm sure if I was a kid, that would have endless uses. Pretty awesome. Now, let's pop him out. Have a little bit of a closer look. He's not bad. I mean, he's not wonderful. He's got a little bit limited posability in the knees. Like, it doesn't... not the knees, the hips rather. It doesn't bend forward as much as I'd like. He's a bit skinny in the thighs. He's not bad as far as these small robots go. He doesn't fall apart, which is pretty key, because a lot of the other headmasters that I've had do fall apart, like third party, especially I'm thinking about head robots. They tend to fall apart. This doesn't do that. But he's got this really annoying scorpion tail pinned onto his back. So I'm going to take that off later. I just left it on for the review. But I hate this thing. It flops around. It's useless and it gets in the way all the time. I see what they were going for. Like, it's their own kind of style. But, I mean, just personally, I don't like it and it's going to go. Now, you can see his face there, which you really can't see when he's in robot mode because it's covered mainly by the mask. The face is pretty cool. But I worry that the rubbing, when I keep tabbing it into that seat, is going to rub the silver paint off there. So I probably won't be storing him in that seat. I'll just be keeping this guy in head mode most of the time, stored inside the head unit down there, like the helmet unit. But he's not bad. Not spectacular, but not bad. You've got some options for weapons. So if I slot off this module from before, you can see that you can bring it over here and slot it in at the back. And then you've basically got a ball joint mounted rack of missiles. So if you like it up there, it's cool, it can go there. And if you want to pull off both sets of missiles, you can slot them together. They can rotate into different configurations. You could give these to somebody else, although I don't really know how they're going to hold them. But a little bit of versatility. For comparison, in Scorpion mode, it gets a bit hard to show because it's just so big. But anyway, here is Fortress Maximus, the new Fortress Maximus. In vehicle mode, he scales up pretty well. So Scorponok, just from his sheer bulk, is a quite huge scorpion. He seems to be a bigger scorpion than he is actually a robot. So when you put him next to the cruiser mode of Maximus, it looks pretty awesome. I like that. And this Fortress Maximus is almost identical in size to G1 Fort Max. So just by seeing that, you get the idea of how he would go with G1. Two big boys here. I like these cannons. These cannons are so awesome. Actually, look at this. We've got 4 cannons here, 4 there, matched up pretty good. The final mode for Pandinus is temple mode or oil refinery mode. I prefer to go with temple mode, honestly, because this structure, as you walk up here, it kind of looks like the entrance to a temple, and it's got some good perspectives. I mean, if you get down low, it looks like you can see up through there. I can see how it would be impressive to walk in there if you were the same size as one of these little guys. So sticking his own headmaster on the platform, you can see how that scales, and it is really well scaled to headmasters for the base mode. I think that it has quite a big space for them to occupy, and I think that's pretty nice. Now, putting him down, we've got the headmaster from Fortress Maximus, and again, he's even smaller, so he looks pretty awesome in there. And let's just see if he can fit where I said. He doesn't fit that well, but you know, you could just stand him on that little panel. He could be operating something in there. And going back to my Shockwave, somehow I feel like Shockwave should be in the temple. I don't know, it just seems like a place where he'd belong. He's got a kind of reverence to him, but he's a bit oversized for this mode. So I think that Pandinus really goes well with the heads of all these other robots, but probably stick to just that, where these bigger robots seem to fit well with, like the Titan Metroplex. Guys like this, they kind of go pretty well with him. He opens up into bigger spaces where you can put slightly bigger figures, but you know, not everything has to be the same. I'm just going to pan up to show you his spire, which doesn't really fit into my frame here, and that points straight up into space, so that might be communicating with something. Maybe they come to the temple to communicate with transformers on another planet. Maybe could be a communications tower, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't think that they pray in there. Maybe, who knows, maybe they do. And on the front here we have this bridge section. So if you position this next to some kind of opening, like if it was on a chasm, you could have this bridge extending out to give them entry across the gap. And there's another sliding, I can't really reach it. If I move all this back, the final panel in there can also slide in and out. And this whole thing is not really very stable. You can see this section moves up and down, so it's not meant to be picked up and moved around when it's in this mode. You need to put it on a steady base, otherwise it just all flops. Now, if you get these out of the way, you can notice that you can shut the entrance. So if that's the temple inside, this panel can open and close rather, to allow entry into there. There's not much else to temple mode, like it doesn't do anything, and there's nothing to see from the back. It's really just kind of something that they've come up with, but you know, it's pretty cool. I actually quite like it. I think that if I was making a big city, I could have a place for this in the city. Before I get to my final thoughts, back in robot mode here, he can start looking a little bit squat because he's so wide, but he's got the ability to just look so much more monstrous if you extend his waist up like this. Maybe that's a little bit too much. Let's try it down a bit more. So like that looks pretty good, but there's no way to lock that in without wedging something into his sliding mechanism. So it's obviously not intended to look that way, and if you do shake it, it'll fall back down. But I like the way he's hunching forward. It's like he's it's something more horrifying about him. His proportions are wrong, and it makes him look like he's a monster. He's a scorpion robot, and I think that improves upon that, not making it worse, but giving it a bit of a shake. It will start to slide back down. My final thoughts. So I might have mentioned it in videos before, but just in general, I don't like MakeToys, and I've steered clear of most of the things that they've made. And that's not because I think that they're inferior or bad quality or anything like that. I just think that the MakeToys have their own stylization. It's a very heavy stylization, and in general, that's not what I want. I want modern toys, but still with a G1 look. Now, in this one instance with Pandinus, I made an exception, and that was because I think that he looks like a pretty awesome giant robot, regardless of whether this is Scorponok or not. And I do like the Scorpion mode. And I do realize that MakeToys, with their more masterpiece looking figures now, have gone in the opposite direction and are really starting to make things that I do find interesting. But just in this one case, I've got to say, I like the figure. I think it's very well executed. There's a lot of quality joints, clicky joints, good molding, a few decent paint apps. Like, it's a good figure, but I do not think that it's a successful Scorponok figure. So it's a cool giant robot, but it doesn't look like Scorponok. It's got all the cues. It's got big purple pinchy bits here, horns on his head, a big spiky tail at the back, green highlights everywhere. Like, it's got everything that would be Scorponok, but he just doesn't pull it off for me. And so he's going to be on his own in my collection, probably hanging out as a Scorpion. But as far as who do I put on the shelf with my other giant robots, it's going to be Sentinel's Gigantic Action Scorponok. So if you're collecting Transformers and you want me to recommend something, then I recommend Gigantic Action Scorponok, just because it looks like Scorponok. I mean, at the time I picked it up, the price was significantly less than what Pandinus is. Now I think that probably it's going to cost more, but I genuinely like this, and I think, like you can see here, Scorponok, here Maximus, they just look fantastic together. And if they made a Maximus, I don't know if I'd be bothered to get it, because we already have such a good one, but just going by what they did with this, I may well do it. Now, does that mean Pandinus is bad? No, but it is so expensive, you have to be able to afford it if you're willing to enjoy it just for the coolness of it and not for the character of who it's supposed to be. And I haven't just decided that overnight. I actually picked this up around about a month ago. I've been fiddling with it, looking at it, just having it on my desk in different modes. I had it in my bedroom in temple mode for a long time with some little figures on it, and I've been enjoying it. But I guess the best way to put it is that I do have actually a little bit of regret that's crept in after buying it, because I felt like it's the odd man out, and I didn't notice it at first, but really it started to set in after I picked up Hasbro's Fortress Maximus. This was quite pricey here. In Australian dollars, it came to about $250, which is, I don't understand why. But I've been having loads of fun actually playing with this, with the headmasters and stuff like that. And the simplicity of his design, like, he's not so fiddly and heavy as Pandinus. And I feel like maybe this is just too far along the spectrum to collectors' fan service. It's gone too far away from being a playable toy, if that is understandable. So while it is good, I think that it's only ever going to be a kind of novelty and not a core part of my collection. So that's the only regret I have. I don't think the figure is bad. I don't know, the Utopia looks a little bit more simple, and maybe for the next figure, I'm still hoping they do another figure, maybe a Triptychon. I hope they just go a little bit more back to the center point where there's not so many bits and pieces all over the place. So that's my video review for MakeToys Pandinus. I'm Odeean. Thank you very much for watching.